Donald Trump bookended a turbulent year, both politically and legally, with his own unique Christmas message posted on his social media platform Truth. In the post, a far cry from the usual festive greetings, Trump makes a list of issues he believes are the most pressing to the American people as they prepare to enter an election year. But in true Trump fashion, he signs off his Christmas message, telling those alleged enemies of the US to rot in hell. Joining me now in the studio is the chair of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson. I mean, it's Trump, isn't it? I mean, it's only Trump would say that. If you were playing a game, who said this, the answer would be Trump.
Of course. There's not a lot of shock value anymore when President Trump comes out and says these things. I mean, he's often clumsy, he's often disruptive, he's often obnoxious, but it just doesn't really surprise anymore.
But it kind of, you know, the Trump diehards love all this. I mean, they won't have a problem with that. He's not going to lose a single vote on this.
Of course not. No, in fact, the Trump diehards really like that. And they would argue that it's not just his policies and his outcomes, but it is his delivery. It is that I don't really care what you think attitude.
Yeah.
But you also have to have, you have to consider the other supporters of Trump, not just the Trump diehards, but the supporters who have come to him since last April when the first indictment came out, the Alvin Bragg indictment. Remember, he was only polling slightly ahead of Ron DeSantis in March of 23.
Correct.
CNN had him down 2 points to DeSantis, and then the indictments started coming, the mug shots, everything else, and now he's up 50 points.
How does that work? I mean, I'm intrigued how that works. I mean, there are psychologists the world over trying to work out, no, this goes against everything, sure.
Well, the PSYOP argument is that the Democrats and the left want him to be the candidate. So they're going to keep up with the indictments and all the Trump derangement syndrome because that elevates Trump in the primaries. And he is getting a lot of support from Republican voters who are considering other candidates, or at least were considering other candidates. But then when the indictment started, and then you have the Trump pushback, like you saw with the tweets or with his own social media platform, when you start seeing that, it actually gets people interested in him because they see him as a victim, as a martyr, and that's working. It's really working for him.
Yeah, and it's, underpinning his whole narrative was always that there's this kind of swamp out there, this establishment that's rotten to the core, whether it's Capitol Hill, whether it's elsewhere, wherever it happens to be, the whole thing stinks, and we're going to drain that swamp.
And there is some context here. I mean, as obnoxious as those messages were, and really, sort of impolite is an understatement, but it's in the, if you look at it in the context of what happened last week, where, a few Democrats in Colorado, unelected judges, removed him from the ballot. So I think, a lot of people are looking at that and saying they're taking away our right to vote. That's the ultimate election interference. So Trump is just fighting back, which is kind of his nature, and that really works for him.
And it's interesting, Sam, if this was a Netflix program, which you can imagine it would be, and Donald Trump was played by, I don't know, some die-hard, gorgeous Russell Crowe or somebody like that, bit of a rough and ready character, then he would be the hero. Everybody would go to work on Monday morning and say, this guy's great, that's exactly what we need in a leader. We need somebody like that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. If you'd pitched this as a story to Netflix, they'd have said, no, thanks. The plot is too incredible. Nobody could believe that you could indict the bloke 4 or 5 separate times, sue him, try and take his business away, and he comes back stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. But here's the thing that those on the left in America considerably underestimate every time. The majority of Americans out there in the country hate Washington with a passion that far exceeds our own dislike of politics here. They hate the media classes. They hate the political classes that they feel have done very well off the back of hard-working Americans, while their values, while their economy, while their jobs, while their way of living has been traduced and undermined. And when they see, some fancy prosecutor in a suit come along and say, well, Donald Trump has undermined every principle that standing behind our republic, they think, and so have you and all of your mates, and at least he was on our side. And look, they can try as hard as they like, but the harder they push, the more popular he'll get.
That is it, Greg, isn't it? That's it summed up nicely then.
Yeah, he does well when he's punched because he likes to punch back. And that works for him. It worked for him in 2016. It almost worked in 2020. And Sam's, you have a great point. I mean, every time there's an indictment, and again, I argue that they want him to be the candidate. They think he's the only one that can lose to Biden, just like he was the only one that could lose to Hillary in 2016. A generic Democrat beats Trump by 8 points, according to the same poll that has Trump up 4 points over Biden. So, there is some merit to the argument that the left wants him to be the candidate, and then once he becomes the candidate, once he seals the nomination, they'll just crush him. They'll go full on orange man bad, Trump derangement syndrome, and they'll make sure he's not the next president.
Can they succeed? Because their man, let's remind everybody, is Joe Biden, for goodness sake. I mean, this is a man, I don't say this to be crass or unkind, but, I saw him giving yet another one of his speeches, or it was a kind of podium response to something. And I genuinely thought he was no longer alive as he was giving the speech. I thought, is this man with us? He didn't appear to know where he was. We know, anyone can fall up aeroplane steps. People normally fall down them, but he falls up them, and trip over, and I get that. And he's an older guy. That doesn't preclude you from office just because you're older. In many cultures, you'd say what makes you wiser, blah, blah, blah. However, he seems to be out of it. This seems to be a guy whose faculties are no longer there, Greg.
And I think that's where he's losing votes or support in his own party. Now, the independents and Republicans think he's a complete failure as president. Opening up the border, waving in 8 million illegal aliens, the reckless foreign policy decisions that he's made, doing his best to wreck the economy with inflation and lack of wage growth to keep up with that inflation. I mean, the list is long on his failures. I don't really care about his cognitive issues and his age, but his own party is starting to care about that. And that's where he has to really worry, is he's losing support with his own party. He's polling under 40, and on every major policy, he's polling in the 20s or the 30s. He's in the 20s on the border. He's in the low 30s on the economy. These are, even on something where has some conservative support, like on his support for Israel, he's still polling at 40 or lower on his ability to deal with that crisis. So the country has lost confidence in Biden, and Biden, so therefore, is the only one who could lose to Trump. So, this is a lose-lose proposition. They're the only candidates that can lose to each other. It's not exactly an endorsement of a great political election.
For people like us, these are incredible times. I'm more excited about that election than our own election, to be honest, Sam, because I think we know what's going to happen pretty much on our one. This could be, but as Greg said, if the Democrats, they want Trump there because they still think that Biden can beat them. When it comes to the American people who go to the ballot box in November and make that choice, the same choice they've made in the last election between the same two men, are they likely to look at this and go, do you know what? Dear old Sleepy Joe, he might only just have a pulse. His cognitive issues might be all over the place, but better the devil you know. Do you think that's the danger for Trump?
Well, they used to say in America in elections, ask yourself the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And for many in America, the answer was they were promised that, look, we're going to bring back stable government. The grown-ups are back in charge and everything is going to be all right again. And for many, many people, it isn't. It hasn't happened. It hasn't improved. And I fear that taken together, I don't fear, I think that taken together with Biden's age and cognitive impairment, which to me is obvious and visible, and the excuses don't wash. And bear in mind, we're talking about him still being president in 5 years' time, right? Will mean that people simply don't trust that when the red
That's why
telephone...
God invented Kamala Harris, you know that.
That's the only thing that keeps him from being impeached.
I think so.
Really.
But look, right, the red telephone, when that goes at 2 a.m, when it's the Kremlin on the line, when there's a global crisis, that is who Americans are choosing, because we can think it's all mad over there, as we often do in this country. But ultimately, say what you like about the United States of America, it is the only global superpower left. Going up in a more and more dangerous world. They're not just electing the President of the United States, they are electing the leader of the free world, and it really matters.
Yeah, I wonder though, Greg, when that phone does go off and it's Biden's office, I can imagine a whole lot of experts coming around and advising Mr. President and saying, look, this is the best thing to do. This is what you do, whether it's security, whether it's homeland issues, whatever it happens to be. With Trump, he doesn't need those people. He'll make the decision there and then.
Yeah,
so,
he's very impulsive, and that worries
Correct.
people. And I think in his first administration, he surrounded himself with people who gave him good advice, and they actually talked him out of some of his impulses.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that will happen again. There will be some people that come back that are I would consider wise and experienced, but
Sure.
not as many as he had in his first administration. But again, people don't miss Trump necessarily, but they miss the policies and the outcomes of Trump's administration. Things were good in America. Things were good in the world. Now we have less peace and less prosperity, and that's a complete electoral loser in America. But Biden can't now say, like he did in 2020, as Sam pointed out, oh, I'm going to bring back the adults, I'm going to bring back normalcy, I'm going to bring back unity. He failed on all of those metrics. So people are going to look at this as two incumbents. And if it's looking at the administrations of each, Trump wins hands down, even if he's imperfect. And I would argue there's plenty of other candidates, especially one or two, that would be much better presidents and much more effective than Trump from the GOP. But the reality is the voter is going to, if it becomes Trump versus Biden, I would argue Trump will win.
There it is. Always good to see you, Greg. We will
to be
speak
here.
again before
Thanks.
November
Of
many
course.
times.
Of course.
Greg Swenson with us, Chair of Republicans Overseas, with us here on TalkTV.